Aloha, I'm Carolyn Tanaka and welcome to Live at the Ledge. Every week we will be meeting with members of the House of Representatives to talk about the topics of interest, legislation that's moving through the House. Today we have the Speaker of the House with us, Scott Saiki. Welcome, Speaker.
Good morning. Good morning, Carolyn. Thanks for having us.
Yesterday, the governor delivered his fourth State of the State to the legislature. Historically, governors have used the State of the State to talk about their achievements and to look ahead to their vision and the year ahead. Can you give us some of your general thoughts, your reaction to the governor's State of the State yesterday?
So I thought the governor gave us a very concise address yesterday. He did summarize some of his achievements from the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. He probably could have provided a little more detail on what his initiatives are for the upcoming legislative session and for the next year. There were a couple of areas in particular that I hoped he would have addressed. One was the need for more infrastructure for us to develop housing and other kinds of initiatives. Mm-hmm. Infrastructure is a big issue for the entire state. Mm-hmm. Until we have more infrastructure, we really can't move ahead with big-scale construction projects. The other area that I wish he had hoped that he would have addressed was regarding his support for STEM and tech programs. The governor didn't mention or reaffirm his support for the TMT project on the Big Island. That's a big issue because if TMT fails, then it will jeopardize the astronomy program in our state, and I'm not sure that that's where we want to go with astronomy. But I'm also pleased that we did line up with the governor. The House lined up with the governor on a couple of areas. One was affordable housing construction, and the other is homelessness.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more in detail, housing and homelessness. The state's working on it, the city's been working on it, administration's been working on it. How will the House approach the problem of homelessness? What are some of the things that you're looking at?
So as we all know, housing is a very big ticket item. It's an expensive item. It's not going to happen overnight. So we need to prioritize and spend our dollars wisely. The House is prepared to scrutinize projects that are being proposed by different government agencies to see which ones are viable and should be funded and can begin to be funded this year. So we're basically going to look at a list of potential projects to see which ones make sense. Mm-hmm. And what we can afford. So several of these projects are aimed at the affordable group, affordable rentals, and so that's hopefully something that we can fund this year, begin to fund.
What about, I know we talk a lot about affordable housing. What about housing for working families, the middle class?
So those are some of the projects that we'll be looking at. There are proposals within the urban core, especially along the rail line. TOD is an area that the state needs to focus on. We need to make sure that we are planning for TOD development. TOD is one of the reasons why rail was built on Oahu. It was to spur mixed-use development extending from the leeward side into urban Honolulu.
So is that approach something, looking at the TOD and how it fits into the whole housing issue, is that an approach that is unique to the House at this point? I mean, nobody else has looked at it that way?
So if we're going to have affordable housing, we have to realize that there has to be mixed-use development because the mixed use will help to subsidize the cost of the affordable housing construction. You can't just have affordable housing construction. It's too expensive.
The governor did talk a lot in his State of the State. Obviously, he did talk about his accomplishments in home housing. Are you satisfied with the progress that they've made in that area, or is there something that the legislature can do or will be doing to move it along either quicker, more efficiently?
Right, so as I mentioned earlier, one of the areas we have to focus on is infrastructure, because even if we want to build high-rise affordable housing in certain areas, we cannot, because there is a lack of sewer capacity and other kinds of infrastructure needs. And for example, in the Mayor Wright area in the Civic Center, there is a proposal to build a multi-use complex, but that can't happen until there's sufficient sewer capacity. That's the case in areas such as the McCully area, where there's a lack of sewer capacity. So even if we want to build, we cannot at this point.
We're looking at long term then here.
Some of this is long term, but we have to begin now by making decisions on infrastructure and projects that are viable.
You, in your opening day speech, you talked about your view of the role of the legislature moving forward. Can you expand on that a little bit? What role do you see the legislature playing?
So the legislature needs to assert itself as the policymaker in our state. The legislature is the body, not the executive and not the courts, that has a duty to set policy and priorities for the state of Hawaii. And it's something that each and every legislator needs to fully comprehend. We set policy not just through enactment of laws, but through our passage of the state budget, our approval of the state budget, because the budget document sets priorities for the state. We have the opportunity to shape programs, to prioritize programs. We can do a lot of things if we set our mind to it. So it's just really important for us to realize that we set policy and that we need to be pretty aggressive about doing that, especially in this day and age.
Okay. You did say that I think you charged your colleagues in the House with being more activists than just watching everything move by.
Right, so it's pretty clear that the status quo is not working and that the public is frustrated with the status quo. I will say that the legislature, I'm sure, is also frustrated with the status quo and that we need to make changes. We just need to be creative and be bold.
So I guess, can we expect a pretty, at least on the House side in the majority caucus, a fairly active, engaged, ready to move legislature?
I'm pretty sure when you look at the House has always, I think, traditionally been the more robust body in the legislature. You have younger and more energetic members in the House. We have a solid leadership team. We have some solid committee chairs and newer members. And I believe that working with the minority caucus, we're going to do some good things this year.
Good. We'll have you back on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and see how much progress we've made. Thank you, Speaker,
Thanks.
for being with us today, and thank you to all of you. See you next week.